The Celtics got some interesting injury news ahead of their Tuesday night matchup against the Toronto Raptors. Welcome back into the heart of Boston sports. I'm your host, Jace Andrews, and without further ado, let's get right into this as the injury report coming out saying Jrue Holiday out for rest. And why that's interesting to me is because he's been missing a couple of games. In fact, missed 4 games before making the last 2 due to a shoulder injury, and it's been kind of nagging him. So I am curious to see if that's more just to let him take a day off, keep that shoulder healthy, especially going to Toronto. You could potentially see him just staying in Boston, not too far of a trip there. So I'm going to kind of look at that more in depth here, but to kind of go through the rest of their injury report, Al Horford, he is questionable with the left big toe strain. I would like to see him play given the next guy is out, Luke Kornet, for personal reasons. That kind of leaves the center position and the bigs somewhat down a little bit, because if you miss Horford and Kornet, you're going to have to see a lot of Kristaps Porzingis, and for a guy who I really want healthy for the entire year, I'd love to see him play for as little as possible, especially in a game against Toronto that, if you get to a good point, you could probably pull him. So let's first start with this Jrue Holiday injury, because it's something that has been nagging him for the past, I'd say, month now at this point. He missed 4 games in a row. He's only played 4 games in February total, and in those games, he's been relatively effective for the most part. His defensive presence is obviously what matters, but in February, it's been somewhat of a slow ride on the offensive side of things. Did help get the win against the Cleveland Cavaliers, which a very big win against them. That's probably, as it looks like to me right now, your biggest opponent, and probably the team you'll see in the Eastern Conference Finals. Whether it'll be your home court advantage or their home court advantage, that's where it's still yet to be decided. The New York Knicks, obviously, on Sunday was one of the biggest wins of the season, in my opinion. I think that really showed how good this Celtics team can be when they have all starting 5 guys out there and rotational minutes and the depth was there. It just felt good. Everything about that game on Sunday felt like it was the Boston Celtics from last year. And not that they haven't been, but, there's just certain things and nuances that you see from them that remind you of last year's team and the way that they were able to just absolutely dominate their opponents in every single aspect. And, well, I liked what I saw from them on this past Saturday. Now, for Jrue Holiday, I think this is a true rest game in a lot of aspects. I like that they put the rest designation on there, because in some aspect that leaves it up to our own minds and concerns to see, is this actually his shoulder that's bothering him? Is it really just a rest game? Because he only had played 2 games in the past couple days. So I think that there is something to be concerned about in the little aspects, just because you want to watch that, and you really could use a healthy Jrue Holiday going down the stretch, because, you got 25 games now left in the regular season, and, every one of those is key, just because you'd really like to be that number 1 seed. You really like to have that home court advantage all the way through the playoffs. It's what you had last year. You want it again, and, who knows? You could not play the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. There's a lot of things that could happen, but don't leave it up to chance and get that number 1 seed again. Now, again, Jrue Holiday being healthy, I think, is more important than the number 1 seed. I think if you get down the stretch and he is a little bit injured, a little bit still nagging him with that shoulder, I would say do exactly just this. Let him rest. Of the 25 games, let him only play 20 and give him 5 games off and see where he can be at for the playoffs. Because I would really like his defensive presence to be on the court, because I think in a lot of aspects, I know that the record that I'm about to show you is a very good one when Jrue Holiday doesn't play this season. In fact, their first game of the year against Toronto, when they played without Jrue Holiday, in that game, they won, and it was by 3. The defensive presence was for sure miss 123 points to a Raptors team that I wouldn't say is necessarily offensive-minded or defensive-minded or ain't really any-minded. They're just not exactly the caliber that I would think the Celtics should be allowing 123 points. Now, there's a lot of nuances in that. Jrue Holiday wasn't playing as one of them, but however, that was also very early in the season. That was back in November, if you can believe that. So, but 8-3 on the year, and you're averaging a good offensive set, but I think the bigger thing is looking at the defensive sets when you don't have Jrue Holiday. And the one thing that I don't necessarily like is the points given up when you don't have him, and that kind of shows how big of a defensive presence he is on the court. When you talk about 113 versus the Clippers. Obviously, the Pacers have kind of been an interesting team this year. You've given up 123 and 105. Philadelphia is not doing great. You lost them when you didn't have Jrue. They scored 118. There's a lot of things to kind of look at in this, but I think overall the mindset that I'm bringing to this is that Jrue Holiday has the sort of Marcus Smart-like presence, and God bless his soul. I wish he could have been on the Celtics championship team last year. He deserved as much as any player out there, but Jrue Holiday has that same mindset. He's definitely a better defensive player by Marcus Smart, but he has that kind of embodiment of him. He just makes the Celtics a different team out there, and while that can be a good thing in a lot of aspects, when you miss him, there needs to be some other guys to step up, and we've seen that a lot of times. You talk about the defensive presence that have really come in from a bunch of different players on the Celtics, most notably down on the lower point. But I think there's a very obvious difference when you have Jrue Holiday on the court and when you don't. And that's just the knack of it. So hopefully he will be very good for the next coming games. And this is just truly making sure that shoulder is all good, given he played 2 games after missing 4. Luke Kornet's the other one I'm going to look at. And the reason I'm not as concerned with him is because he definitely is a big key. And I like the way he's played. And I know the stats maybe don't show it as much as, again, Jrue Holiday, kind of same aspect of Luke Kornet. He has a different presence on the court, played very well against the Knicks, had 8 points on Sunday. He's just, again, a good presence. But the bigger thing with Luke Kornet to me is not the fact that, he's going to be out, we're going to be missing a key piece or anything like that. The fact of the matter is that Al Horford with that sprained toe is still, questionable. And in my mind, if you're looking at this and Luke Kornet is out, obviously personal reasons, it's not an injury designation, but however, with him being out, you really want to not make Kristaps Porzingis play as much as possible with his injury history in the past couple of years. So you want to make sure that you can hopefully have Al Horford out there. And so it's an interesting note, though, that without Luke Kornet, somehow the Celtics just have a good record with it. And that's not, I don't think there's any correlation behind it, but they're 6-0 when he doesn't play. And 6-0, but they've also won some pretty big games. Milwaukee, Cleveland, they've, took a really big painkiller and crushed the Clippers. I mean, they beat Ant and the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's kind of weird. And again, I don't think it has any correlation whatsoever between Luke Kornet and him not playing and the Celtics winning. It's just a fun stat. I like to look it up and kind of see what these players are doing when they aren't on the court. So in my mind, Luke Kornet won't play, obviously. Hal Horford, if he can play, I would push for him too. And again, you don't need to put him out there a lot, but I would just hate to have 2 of your centers out there, so 2 of your big men, and you're going to force Kristaps into a pretty tough position to play a lot, obviously. You have the depth there. I don't think it's going to be that big a deal, and it's also 1 game, but at the same fact, you want to try and win every game. You got 25 games left. You're trying to fight for that number 1 speed. You got to do anything you can right now to try and get that. So that's just in my mind what I'm looking at. Do want to talk about the Celtics secret weapon, I'm going to call him, because there's been a lot of talk about Mr. Peyton Pritchard right now on the interwebs, including Twitter. He is the heavy favorite right now to win the 6th Man of the Year, and a lot of people are saying that. I will kind of throw this out there that I don't know how truly right these odds are in some aspects. Obviously, it's NBA Central, not Centel, so I got that at least. But Pritchard is favoring him by 200 there. Minus 200 rather. And then you have DeAndre Hunter, who's plus 400 right behind him. Now, I do think at the bottom there, Ty Jerome is definitely making his case known, especially with what he's been doing with the Cavs in the past 5-6 games or whatever. But I still think Peyton Pritchard has been somewhat of a secret weapon. He had the leading score in points 2 games ago. He's been something of otherworldly in terms of what we've seen from Peyton Pritchard in the past now. And again, we all know him as the buzzer beater king, but he has done something that I think people didn't expect from him this year, and he is kind of making them a difference maker. I think he is a difference maker, and a lot of people don't talk about him enough. I think in a lot of aspects, he's just more flair to this already fun Celtics team, but I truly think this year, when you look at comparisons from last to this year, Peyton Pritchard is one that has played substantially better. And again, not saying he played bad last year. I'm just saying that this year he has played substantially better, and I think could easily be the reason the Celtics get back to the finals and potentially win the finals and go back to back. So that's really what I'm looking at with Peyton Pritchard. And I think, funny enough, there is some sort of correlation if he were to win the 6th Man of the Year, because if you look at this, and again, we're talking about the Celtics back in the 80s when they were the best team on planet Earth, whatever, but Kevin McHale won it 2 years in a row, and the Celtics were in the finals both those years, beat the Lakers one time, lost to the Lakers the other, and then Bill Walton won it in 1985 or 1986 season, and the Celtics defeated the Rockets. Well, what happened in the year that Malcolm Brogdon won it? Wasn't exactly the most fun playoffs, I'll tell you that. I think that there was some fun times. Obviously, that was the year that the Celtics were defeated by the Miami Heat. They had a 3-0 lead, or the Miami Heat had a 3-0 lead, I should say. And the Celtics were able to get back to a Game 7, had some spectacular buzzer beater in Game 6. But in Game 7, it just wasn't good. Now, again, Malcolm Brogdon is completely and utterly different than what we're talking about here with Peyton Pritchard. But I do think it is worth noting that of the 4 times that you have had the 6th Man of the Year, which is looking like the Celtics will do that again. Again, there's 25 games left. There's a lot that could happen. However, Peyton, with the way he's done all year, with the way he's been consistent all year, I don't think anything is going to change. And so, with that being said, if he were to win, well, out of the 4 times you have had the Sixth Man of the Year award, you've gone to the finals 3 of those times. You've won the championship 2 of those times. Now, obviously, that was in 1985, the most recent one. Malcolm Brogdon was the other one that was, you lost in the Eastern Conference Finals. But still, you have historic success when you have the Sixth Man of the Year. And so I think that Peyton Pritchard could easily be the secret weapon to getting to the back-to-back, because I truly think that if you're trying to look at teams who want to go for that second-in-a-row championship, it's a lot about, okay, what's different? What are they going to do this time to throw teams off? What's different? And sometimes you don't need that, but I think it's always a good thing to have. And in this aspect, the Celtics have a Peyton Pritchard who is better than he was last year. The Oregon guy, he has done amazing things, and he's just not a buzzer beater guy anymore. He's a true sixth man, played valuable minutes, and in a lot of aspects, see him to play a lot against the Raptors tonight. As with the Jrue Holiday out, guess who's stepping in, taking that starting role? Probably going to be Peyton Pritchard. So I'm excited to see what we do tonight, but for now, that does it for me. This is the Heart of Boston Sports. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know if you think the Celtics are going back to back. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.